There's more gold in a single ton of discarded smartphones than in a ton of gold ore pulled from a mine. A hidden industry has learned to extract it by shredding, burning, and dissolving the electronics you threw away. Somewhere right now, a machine is tearing an old phone into confetti, and somewhere further down that line, the metal that used to carry your text messages is cooling into a bar of pure gold. Think about the drawer. Almost everyone has one. The drawer where dead phones go to be forgotten, tangled with chargers that fit nothing in a cracked tablet you meant to trade in 3 years ago. To you, it's junk. To a growing global industry, that drawer is a mineral deposit, and it is not a small one. The planet is producing this kind of waste faster than almost any other stream of trash on Earth, and buried inside it is a fortune in metals that most people have no idea they are throwing away. The reason comes down to a strange fact about how gold is distributed. When miners dig gold out of the ground, they are chasing incredibly thin traces of it. A good, workable ore body might yield only a few grams of gold for every ton of rock that gets crushed, hauled, and processed. Sometimes it is even less than that. Whole mountains get moved to collect enough gold to fill a coffee cup. Now compare that to a ton of old circuit boards. Estimates vary widely depending on the type of device and who is doing the counting. But end-of-life smartphones and the boards inside them have been reported to contain on the order of hundreds of grams of gold per ton. Some sources claim a ton of certain electronics can hold dozens, even hundreds of times more gold than a ton of natural ore. Let that settle for a second. The circuit board in a phone you replaced without a second thought may be, gram for gram, richer than the rock that professional miners spend billions to dig up. That is the single fact that launched an entire shadow economy. Engineers gave it a name that sounds almost poetic. They call it urban mining. The idea is simple and a little unsettling. Instead of digging ore out of the ground, you mine the city. You mine the landfill, you mine the drawer. And gold is only the headline. Those same boards are laced with copper, silver, palladium, tin, and a scattering of rare metals that modern industry is desperate for. A smartphone is, in a very real sense, a tiny, dense ore body engineered by accident. Nobody set out to bury treasure inside your pocket. It just happens that building fast, reliable electronics requires precious metals, because gold does not corrode and it conducts electricity beautifully. Every gleaming contact, every hair-thin connection, is a little vein of value. Multiply that by the billions of devices humanity discards, and you begin to understand the scale of what is being thrown into the trash. Consider palladium, a metal most people have never heard of, silvery white and rarer than gold. It hides in the tiny capacitors soldered across a circuit board, and it commands prices that rival or exceed gold on the open market. Silver runs like threadwork through the solder and the connections. Copper, less glamorous but far heavier in bulk, is often the real economic backbone of the whole operation, because there is simply so much of it. Here is a fact worth passing along. The volume of gold and other precious metals sitting inside the world's discarded electronics has been valued, by various estimates, in the tens of billions of dollars every single year. We are not talking about a hobbyist side hustle. We are talking about a metal stream that, if it were a country's mine, would rank among the most valuable deposits on the planet. And most of it, remember, is being thrown away. So how big is this river of waste, really? According to the most recent United Nations Global E-Waste Monitor, the world generated an estimated 62 million tons of electronic waste in a single recent year. 62 million tons. That is a number so large it stops meaning anything, so try to picture it another way. It is enough discarded electronics to fill a convoy of heavy trucks that, lined up bumper to bumper, would stretch around the equator, and the truly alarming part is the trend. That same report estimates e-waste is rising roughly 5 times faster than the amount being formally, safely recycled. On current trajectories it could climb toward the low 80s of millions of tons per year by the end of this decade. Here is the fact worth telling a friend tonight. Of all that electronic waste, only around a fifth to a quarter of it, by the report's estimate, is documented as being properly collected and recycled. The rest, the overwhelming majority, vanishes. It gets landfilled, incinerated, stashed in drawers, or shipped across borders to places where it is torn apart by hand. Which means the greatest gold deposit of the modern age is mostly being wasted, or worse, mined in the most dangerous way imaginable. Subscribe to Uncharted Depths, and stay with us. because in a moment we are going to follow a single dead phone all the way from the shredder to a finished gold bar. And then into the toxic backyards where children do this work by hand. But before any of that gold can be recovered, the phone has to be found. And that turns out to be the hardest part of the whole business. Ore in the ground stays put. You can map it, buy the rights to it, and dig it for decades. Urban ore is scattered across billions of pockets, drawers, and dumpsters in every country on Earth. And getting hold of it means convincing ordinary people to hand over their dead devices instead of hoarding them or tossing them in the household bin. This is the quiet reason so much value slips through the cracks. Collection is a logistics nightmare, and a phone that never gets collected is a gold deposit that stays locked in a sock drawer forever. The companies that win at urban mining are, as much as anything, companies that have solved the boring problem of gathering the raw material at scale. Let's start with the clean version, the way it is supposed to be done. Follow a phone into one of the world's advanced recycling facilities, and the first thing that happens is almost violent. The device is fed into an industrial shredder. Not a paper shredder, something far heavier, with hardened steel teeth that reduce glass, plastic, metal, and silicon into a coarse, glittering gravel in seconds. There is no delicate disassembly here. Speed is everything. What comes out the other side looks like dark, metallic sand, flecked with color, utterly unrecognizable as the thing that once buzzed on your nightstand. That shredded material is then sorted. Magnets pull out steel. Currents and air separators divide the light plastics from the dense metals. What the industry is really after is the fraction rich in copper and precious metals, and this is where the process splits into two great pathways, two ancient sciences with intimidating names. The first is pyrometallurgy. The second is hydrometallurgy. Fire and water. Or more precisely, fire and acid. Pyrometallurgy is the fire path, and it is exactly what it sounds like. The metal-bearing fraction is fed into enormous smelters and heated to temperatures that would melt most of the world around you. At some of the most advanced integrated smelters, plants in countries like Sweden and Belgium that are among the largest electronics recyclers on Earth, shredded circuit boards are actually blended into a copper smelting process. Molten copper acts like a magnet for precious metals, gathering the gold, silver, and palladium out of the mix and pulling them along as impurities to be separated later. The plastics in the boards do not go to waste either. They burn as fuel, feeding the very fire that melts the metals. It is brutal, energy-hungry, and, when done inside a properly engineered plant with serious pollution controls, remarkably effective. Those integrated smelters can recover an enormous share of the precious metals that go in. But smelting alone does not give you a pure gold bar. For that, you need the water path, hydrometallurgy, which really means chemistry. The concentrated metals are dissolved in powerful chemical solutions that peel the elements apart one by one. Refiners have long used acids capable of dissolving gold itself, along with other aggressive leaching agents, to strip the precious metal into a liquid and then coax it back out as a solid of astonishing purity. Historically, the industry has leaned on some genuinely dangerous chemistry to do this, including cyanide-based processes and acid baths. Which is precisely why serious refining is supposed to happen behind sealed doors, under fume hoods, with trained chemists and waste treatment systems. We are describing what happens, not how to do it, because in the wrong hands this chemistry is lethal. The end result, when it works, is a poured bar of gold that started its life as the contacts inside a broken phone, trash into treasure, quite literally. Now here is the tension at the heart of this whole story. That clean, high-tech version, the sealed smelters and the trained chemists, handles only a slice of the world's e-waste. Remember, the majority never reaches a proper facility. So where does it go? A great deal of it flows, often illegally and under misleading labels like used goods or donations, from wealthy countries to some of the poorest places on Earth. And there, the same extraction happens, but with no shredders, no fume hoods, no protection at all. Just human hands, open fire, and acid. For years, the most infamous of these places was Ogbogloshi, a sprawling scrapyard on the edge of Accra, in Ghana. Before parts of it were demolished, it became a global symbol of informal e-waste recycling, a place where, by some estimates, well over 100,000 tons of discarded electronics passed through in a single year. Much of the work there was done by young men and boys. To get at the copper inside a cable, You do not carefully strip the plastic. You set it on fire. Great black plumes of smoke rose over the site as workers burned bundles of wire and shattered circuit boards over open flames, breathing the fumes directly, to melt away the plastic and leave the bare metal behind. Studies of the soil at those burning grounds have measured lead contamination at levels many, many times what would be considered safe, along with a cocktail of other toxic metals. The same grim pattern appeared on the other side of the world, in a town called Guiyu, in southern China, for a long time considered one of the largest electronic waste processing hubs anywhere. There, in workshops and along riverbanks, people cooked circuit boards over small stoves to loosen the chips, and dunked microchips into open baths of corrosive acid to leach out the gold, pouring the spent chemicals into the ground and the water. Researchers who studied the community documented alarming rates of lead exposure, with some studies reporting that a large majority of local children showed elevated lead in their blood. And lead is not a problem you shake off. In children especially, it is linked to lasting harm to the developing brain and nervous system. Sit with the contrast for a moment, because this is the fact that ought to stay with you. In a sealed plant in Sweden, a robot-fed furnace pulls gold out of your old phone under strict environmental controls. In a backyard half a world away, a teenager pulls the very same gold out of the very same kind of phone by breathing poison over an open fire. The metal is identical. The chemistry rhymes. Only the human cost is different, and it is being paid by the people who can least afford it. So who actually profits from all this? Follow the gold and the answer gets complicated. In the formal world, the value flows to sophisticated recyclers and refiners, to the smelting giants who have turned e-scrap into a genuine feedstock, and increasingly to the electronics companies themselves, who have realized that recovered gold and copper can feed straight back into new devices. Recycled precious metal from a phone can end up inside next year's phone. The loop closes, cleanly, when the system works. In the informal world, the value is skimmed at every stage by scrap dealers, middlemen, and traders, while the workers at the very bottom, the ones actually breathing the smoke, earn a pittance and carry all the risk. The gold rises up the chain. The poison stays at the bottom. And this is not a problem that is going away. If anything, it is accelerating. Every year we buy more devices, and we keep them for less time. Phones are designed to be replaced, not repaired. Batteries are glued in. Screens are sealed. The whole industry runs on the expectation that you will upgrade, which means the river of e-waste will keep rising, 5 times faster than our ability to recycle it responsibly. We are, in effect, manufacturing the richest gold deposit in human history and then, for the most part, throwing it away or setting it on fire in someone else's backyard. There is one more cruel twist worth naming. The informal, backyard method is not just dangerous, it is wildly wasteful. When you burn a circuit board over an open fire to get at the copper, much of the gold and the palladium goes up in the smoke or gets lost in the ash and the runoff. Crude acid baths spill precious metal into the soil and the river. So the very same phone that might surrender almost all of its gold inside a sealed, engineered smelter gives up only a fraction of it in a backyard, while poisoning everything around it. The poorest processing method destroys the most value, and does the most harm at the same time. It is, in every sense, the worst of all worlds, and it is how a huge share of humanity's e-waste is currently being handled. There is a hopeful reading of all this, and it is worth holding on to. The metals do not disappear, they are still there, waiting, in the drawers and the landfills and the scrapyards. Urban mining could, in principle, supply a serious share of the precious metals modern life demands, without tearing a single new mountain apart, without displacing a single community for a new open pit. The technology to do it cleanly exists. It runs in Sweden and Belgium right now. The obstacle is not really science. It is logistics, economics, and will, the unglamorous work of collecting the phones, of building the plants, of refusing to let the poison flow downhill to the poorest. So here is the question to carry with you out of this. The next time you drop a dead phone into a drawer, you will know that you are not holding junk. You are holding ore, richer than most of what miners chase in the ground, laced with gold that took the earth billions of years to make in a factory a few weeks to hide inside your pocket. The only question left is who gets it, and what it costs them to pull it out. Will the gold in your drawer be mined by a machine behind sealed doors, or by a child over an open flame? Because one way or another, someone is going to come for it. Subscribe, turn on notifications, and we'll see you on Uncharted Depths.